Donkey Kong, one of Nintendo's most recognized and oldest characters. Since 1981, Donkey Kong has been a household name. The game that introduced Super Mario is even named after this ape. However, it took Nintendo a while to concretely nail this character. From 1981 to 1994, DK was more of a villainous character for Mario, and he didn't even look the same like he does today. In fact, it's not even technically the same guy, but there's more on that later. Instead, Donkey Kong only appeared in arcade-style games, and was kind of left to rot as a relic of Nintendo's past. That was until the Super Nintendo was out, and UK-based studio named Rareware, or Rare for short, who at the time were well known for Battletoads and Killer Instinct. They approached Nintendo about bringing back Donkey Kong for his very own platforming adventure. Not only this game would take advantage of Silicon Graphics computers to create and animate 3D models that would then be compressed down into 2D sprites. This was unlike any other console at the time. Luckily, Nintendo agreed, and the game was a colossal success, making it the third best-selling game on the Super Nintendo at 9.3 million copies sold. Donkey Kong was back, and better than ever, and he was a hero. He was no longer kidnapping damsels and throwing barrels at plumbers, at least for now. And at the time, this was the pinnacle of graphics. Sega had nothing like this. Donkey Kong Country pushed the SNES to its absolute limits. It's hard to believe, but the SNES didn't do as well as you might think sales-wise, but Donkey Kong Country pushed the console into more households and saved the floundering console. I personally don't have much of a history with this particular game, as I wasn't even alive when it came out. However, I did know Donkey Kong from the Mario games I played as a child, and even had the Donkey Kong Country animated cartoon show on DVD, which, by the way, I believe is actually a good show, unironically. It wasn't until I became interested in retro games that I found out about this game, and bought it through Virtual Console on the Wii, and eventually beat it. I even went and got the GBA version of this game just so I could play it on the go. I liked it that much. It's also thanks to this game that Rare would go on to make games like Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and so much more. And for that, I am forever grateful for this game's mere existence. So does this game hold up today? There have been so many amazing platformers that have released since this game came out. Is it even worth playing still? Come on. You already know it does. Donkey Kong Country is still one of the very best 2D platformers ever made. This game defined the 16-bit era, and holds up shockingly well from a gameplay and visual standpoint. The level design is on point. Every obstacle feels purposefully placed and thought out. Unlike other games of the genre at the time, the levels don't feel like just some obstacles placed by some designer. They feel contextual and like an actual location on DK Isle. I say this because there are very few floating platforms in this game. The platforms are often diegetic, like trees or hills or something being held up by ropes or beams, feeling like a legit part of this giant island that you are exploring. It's not perfect with this though. There are some levels that just have some floating barrels for some reason, but it's very rare that something feels artificial. There is nothing wrong with non-diegetic game design, but I simply prefer my 2D platformers to feel like more than a specifically placed set of platforming challenges. You get me? This game plays like you would expect. You run and jump, and you can control two characters in this game. First, there is obviously DK himself, and then there is the newly introduced Diddy Kong. Donkey Kong is the powerhouse of the two. He can kill all enemies at a single jump, but can't jump as far or move as nimbly as Diddy can. However, both of these characters can only take a single hit of damage, so you'd better have a second Kong or it's back to the start for you. What makes this game stand out is the rolling mechanic. By tapping the run button, the character would roll. This roll adds a small boost of speed, as well as acting as an attack to kill enemies. But then there's also the sacred roll jump. By rolling off of the ledge, it gives you an opportunity to jump while in midair. This maneuver is so fun to pull off and allows for some fun collectible placements. Speaking of which, in each level, you will be collecting many bananas which act identically to coins or rings, with 100 granting you an extra life. But then there are also 4 Kong letters, K, O, N, and G, which when collected gives you an extra life as well. Every level is jam-packed with secret areas too, typically found by throwing barrels at walls or using the several animal bodies found in this game. There is the forever iconic Rambi the Rhino who kills any enemy in front of him. On Guard the Swordfish who can use his sword to skewer foes and is the only way to attack underwater. Espresso the Ostrich who can glide through the air. And Winky the Frog who can jump real high. Squawks the Parrot only appears on one level in this game, as a flashlight of all things. Which is weird, but he'll get his moments in the future. All animal buddies besides Squawks have their own bonus areas too, that can be played after collecting 3 of their respectable tokens. These areas allow you to gain extra lives quickly and efficiently. Safe to say there is plenty to look out for in this game. It won't be easy either. This game is well known for being rather challenging. There is the massive difficulty spike somewhere in the middle of the game. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but you'll know once you reach it. Minecart Madness is where most players begin to struggle due to the sudden shift in gameplay style that doesn't allow you to take it slowly. Another element that increases the challenge are this game's camera issues. There are several instances where I flat out just can't see what's in front of me, and unlike other platformers, there are 0 camera controls here. This can potentially suck all enjoyment out of levels, like in Poison Pond for instance, where it's a clever and challenging take on a water level, but you just can't see anything that's around you, and I just can't get the same level of enjoyment that I can out of other levels. Granted, this is a fairly tiny complaint since it only shows up a handful of levels, and experienced players can usually tell where certain enemies or pits are. This is comparable to the classic Sonic games, which have very similar problems. The intense challenge is what keeps me hooked on this game. I play through this game fairly regularly, and can feel myself improve with each subsequent playthrough, to the point where it can only take me a couple of hours or so to beat the game. It's actually really rewarding. One thing that is definitely not hard, however, are the bosses. They're all kind of a joke. There are 2 jumpy beavers, 2 giant birds, a mildly annoyed bee, and a possessed oil barrel. Inversely, the final fight against King K. Rool is actually pretty hard, as he tries to juke you out and progressively moves faster and faster and jumps further and further. The general enemies you run into in each level, while relatively easy to kill, are a major set piece in what makes these levels so fun to play, since you can't just jump on them and call it a day. Some enemies take multiple hits, some can be rolled into, some can't, and some enemies need to be avoided altogether. You'll need to deal with the challenge placed in front of you on the fly. One more important level gimmick, and one of this game's major pillars in terms of its level design, are the barrel cannons and barrels in general. Barrel cannons make up some of the most exhilarating and fast-paced levels in the game. They are simple. They allow the player to fire themselves out of a cannon. Sometimes they move, sometimes they rotate, sometimes they fire automatically, and sometimes you'll need to time your button presses to get to the right barrel safely. Experienced players can fire through these levels at a breakneck pace, but new players would find this immensely challenging. Snow Barrel Blast is the perfect example of why this gimmick works so well, since by this point in the game, you've already been introduced to these barrels, but now they move and rotate at varying speeds, mixed with zingers and icy terrain, which makes up one of my personal favourite levels in the entire series. The story of Donkey Kong Country is as simple as it gets. Brand new villain and overall bad guy, King K. Rool and his army of Kremlings have invaded and stolen the Kong's prized banana hoard, sending Diddy and Donkey on their revenge-fueled journey to decrown this crocodile and retrieve their hoard. On this journey, the player will meet new members of the Kong family. First of all, there is Cranky Kong, who offers helpful advice as well as stories of days gone by. It's fairly well known at this point that Cranky is actually supposed to be the original DK from the arcade days, who is now old and, well, cranky. Then there is Candy Kong, DK's girlfriend, who acts as several save points, one in each world. The coolest of them all is the legendary Funky Kong, who allows you to revisit previous worlds through Funky's flights. All of these characters will continue to show up in games from time to time, Diddy and Cranky in particular being mainstays at this point. And Funky Kong being among the most powerful Kongs, being top tier in pretty much every game he is playable in, be it kart racing or baseball. If you ask anyone what the classic DKC games are most known for, they will most likely answer with its graphical quality for the time. But while the graphics may look a tad crusty for today's standards, the game still looks pretty impressive considering the hardware it ran on. That's not saying that other SNES games look bad. Far from it, but games like Yoshi's Island or Mega Man X had 2D sprites, meaning that they had to stick with the limits of said sprites, mainly the limited animation frames. Whereas Rare had the opposite problem. They had way too many frames of animation, due to the CG models being squished into tiny sprites, so they had to cut out several frames of animation just to make the sprites move properly. So many stunning vistas and environments packed with detail and love, spanning across the entire game, all the way from Congo Jungle to Gangplank Galleon. The dynamic weather effects or background details really sell these environments and make them just feel so much more immersive and well lived in. The animations of the Kongs are super charming as well. The intro cutscene shows off this masterfully with the goofy facial expressions and fun visual humour from both Donkey Kong and Frankie. Compare this to Mario at the time, who didn't even emote once during gameplay. Even the enemies look great, each having unique sounds that play when killed. You just don't get that level of detail anywhere else on the SNES. Another piece of the presentation that needs no introduction is this game's music, composed by the brilliant David Wise and Evelyn Fisher. Easily one of my favourite soundtracks of all time. Seriously, every song serves their levels and themes perfectly. It doesn't matter if it's a dingy factory or underwater reef. The music often reflects the gameplay experience, opting for a faster paced song for intense minecart rides for example, emulating what you were doing during the level. This game wouldn't be such a classic without the musical talent behind it. It's not controversial to say that Aquatic Ambience absolutely steals the show, being one of the very best video game songs ever crafted. It's just such a calming song with a slower pace, and more string instruments to set the tone of an underwater paradise. It's almost healing to listen to. If you wish to listen to these songs outside of the game, I'd definitely recommend finding the restored version of the songs for the highest quality versions of these masterpieces of video game music. Donkey Kong Country, despite being a 16-bit platformer, truly feels like a grand journey across DK Island, an ambitious marvel of game design. While it has its issues as a 2D platformer, it triumphs in terms of immersion and detail. The very experience of playing this game for the first time is rewarding and intensely gratifying, learning the mechanics and mastering them inside and out while taking on these gorgeous set pieces and wonderful music. It's honestly relaxing. How amazing is it that its sequel improves on this game's foundation in almost every single aspect? I can't wait to eventually talk about DKC 2, but as it stands right now, Donkey Kong Country is one of the best games of its era and brought Rare into the gaming public's eye. If you haven't already, please play this game. It's right there for Nintendo Switch Online members, or just emulate it. It honestly doesn't bother me. Just play it. And thank you for watching this video. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts on this game. Let's get a good discussion going.